Let's talk about the two John Oliver videos. Yeah, first off, what were the significant points that you think I wanted you to get out of those two John Oliver videos? The first one, what was that video even called?
I think it was called Scientific Studies.
What were some significant takeaways from that one that you thought were interesting or outrageous?
That replication studies are underfunded, so usually people won't do it twice, more than once, because they don't
Right.
have the funding.
And what's so important about replication studies?
It gives more of like an accurate study, maybe.
Yeah, that is science. Science is, it's not just something that you find through the controlled experiment. It needs to be something that can be replicated over and over again to prove that it wasn't just a fluke, that there wasn't some other variable that got involved that they didn't really understand was there. So yeah, replication studies, that is huge, like incredibly important, and yet not happening at all because, like you said, there's no money for it. No one's going to get money for proving something is true that other people already proved is true. On top of that, what are some of the other things about studies that were problematic?
How some information gets like distorted and it's kind of like a game of telephone, he mentioned.
Yeah, and how did that work out? He gave a couple examples.
Like one of the examples was like, I think it was like a wine a day is like an hour at the gym or something, but
Right.
the study wasn't even like similar to that.
Oh yeah. Think about what the studies are for. Where is this information coming from? Is there really a study that focused exactly on that thing? Like scientists, a group of scientists were like, we're going to try and figure out if wine is better than working out. Was that a study at all? No. Where do they come up with that kind of stuff? What was a thing that they do to come out with new findings like that that they can give to the media and then play telephone with? There was a term. Anyone remember? Okay, does anyone remember hearing the term p hacking?
Yeah.
Okay, what's p hacking? You've got a whole bunch of data and you pretty much try to make connections. What were some of the examples of things that they found out due to p hacking, due to making random connections with the data that they got from some other experiment they were doing? Any correlations, like that weird one about Jewish people and tomatoes, stuff like that? Yeah. So you saw that there were these weird correlations that they were able to make that are technically findings from the study, but they weren't actually a direct experiment trying to solve something with that. And on top of it, like I said before multiple times, you can make numbers bend to fit something. And so long as, like Sam, you were talking about, like something that the media would actually be interested in reporting on, it has to be something that is like chocolate and preeclampsia. The idea of chocolate being good for pregnant women, things like that, or coffee, or something that people use a lot and probably think something differently about, like this thing is really bad for me or good for me. And so they can, if they find something, like, why do they even do this, right? Why do they even put out information like that? Are the scientists just madmen just trying to get like attention? Yeah, what was that, Samantha?
It's well, he mentioned that scientists are like pressured to publish, but I think the news outlets do it just to get views.
Right. The news outlets do it to get views, which is money. That results in money. But the same thing, like you said, for the scientists too, they're pushed to publish, but in publishing, they're getting more recognition and they're also getting funding. They're getting more interest in the study that they're doing. So they publish findings along the way of the study they're doing, and they're trying to get more funding so that they can keep going with it. And so if they find out some random thing about chocolate through p hacking along the way of trying to figure out something completely different, then they'll put stuff like that out. So it becomes problematic because look at all the steps, look at all the things that end up happening with miscommunication and completely misunderstanding things. What about the thing with like cancer and smelling farts? Did you guys catch that? To report on that, to report that smelling farts is good for people with cancer, when that's not at all what the findings really were. What's the end result of that? What do you think would happen? You're dying of cancer, and someone tells you that. You're gonna go smell some farts? I mean, the end result is someone's already suffering, and then you tell them something like that. It's kind of like bullying in a way, not with the motive, but with the end result is like you literally, like the person's already suffering, and now you push them to do something like that. Like, go touch your tongue to the frozen pole, you know? You guys get your tongue would stick, and then it would be painful, and then embarrassing, and then all that. Yeah, so that's actually the least significant of the problematic results from a situation like that. Because, I mean, scientists, you see the motive isn't necessarily bad. They want funding so that they can keep doing the thing that they truly believe is good for us to find out. But everything somehow, all the other priorities get set aside for money. Money becomes the chief priority for everything in every one of those steps. And that can end up with some pretty costly results for like us, like society. Anything else on that one? Did you guys like it? Was it funny? Yeah, he's pretty awesome. I don't agree with everything that John Oliver says. It's here or there, but if you think about it, it's like an essay, don't you think? His segments are like essays. They're just not written down. He puts the sources on the screen. He talks about them. He explains them out, the significance of them. He throws a joke in there. You guys don't need to throw jokes in there. You don't have time for jokes. But you see, you can use that kind of thing as a model. Don't go and just type out a John Oliver sketch. I'll know. And there's ways that stuff gets caught in the plagiarism test stuff. But if you want a model for what an essay should look like, especially in line with the argument of fact essay, think about stuff like that, because there's other people, there's YouTubers that do stuff like that too. Not to that level, obviously. They don't have writers working for them. Some of them do. But it's good to have an example, but like understanding the parameters of your claim, keep that claim controlled to a 5-page essay. So that was facts, right? That was talking about facts, things that we use. We use statistics like that. Well, statistics and data, things that we're taking as fact because it's coming from scientific studies, and we use it to interpret or to justify things that we do in life, like eating chocolate or drinking wine or not working out or whatever. It's stuff that does impact us. What about the other one? The astroturfing. What do you think that I wanted you to get out of that one? Come on, guys, not all at once. What was something significant in that one, in that video, that I probably wanted you to figure out?
That one commercial where it was like a family taking in their groceries, and it was like stop taxes on it was like bottles or something, but it was actually just like big soda corporations who made that commercial. It doesn't really affect like families that much, or just normal people.
So that's a perfect example of astroturfing. Will you be more inclined to listen if it's a corporation or if it's like a citizen-funded movement? Okay, that was rhetorical. Yes, like if it's people like you, right? So they're being deceptive, like completely. They are actually trying to push an agenda, push like a corporate agenda to actually change things politically, like on a political scale, because that had to do with voting, right? So that's crazy. Like a company trying to manipulate the populace by acting like it's a citizen funded, started movement, and then it's really a corporate manipulation. That's freaking hardcore. And they do that all the time. They'll even do that with advertisements, just straight, because that is an advertisement, but it's really propaganda for like lawmaking stuff. But has anyone heard of native advertising? So I didn't give you guys any native advertising ads, but what that is the ad looks like a news report. Like you can't really differentiate who the ad is from. So it would look like, let's say, a news report on some environmental issues of global warming or something, but it's funded by BP or by Chevron or one of the oil companies. and they are literally just spewing propaganda to try and make them look good, or to change what you believe about what would be going on with that, like so that it can benefit them in the way that you look at the oil industry or something like that. It used to be something that journalism wasn't supposed to do. There was supposed to be this clear line stopping journalism from that. There's actually a John Oliver video, imagine that, on native advertising. So you can always go and look that up, but it's crazy to see the extents that companies will go to and that they are able to go to legally in order to straight up spew propaganda at us, to brainwash us or manipulate us like puppets into doing their bidding. That is frightening that that's actually legal. How did that even happen, right? We can talk about court cases and Citizens United, and that's a court case from 2010. But it's crazy to see just how much they can do that's deliberate, like way further than just the ads that we were talking about and pushing on, trying to convince you of things that way. It's deliberate false information that they're feeding you, or false, like a full-on narrative as if it were supposed to be giving you objective news. So completely misleading about the source and the information involved. What else did we find in that video? Anything about expert testimony, expert opinion, anything? Was there not a doctor on the stand talking about babies and fires?
Where the mom put the candle in the crib.
Right. What happened with that story?
The first time that he kind of like mentioned it and how he read it sounded like a joke, because the person who was it a doctor, I guess, who was like, when they were interviewing him, he said that the mom put a candle inside the baby's crib, and he started saying that, like, a baby, a small human or something, like a person the size of a dog, I guess. So like his comparison to things kind of like took the seriousness off of it. And I guess the second time that they mentioned the incident, they started adding more things, taking out things that were kind of not serious to it.
So it was on the stand. This is a doctor. He's sworn an oath to tell the truth, and he's doing this in front of Congress or something like that, and he's supposed to be
serious, like a big deal about it.
Right. He's giving what everyone in the audience assumes is a straight testimony, and then later on he tries to play it off kind of like a joke, but more along the lines of an allegory or an analogy. He says that it's not true, but later on, many times after he's already given this testimony, because they realized, they found out, they looked into it, and all the differences in the story weren't matching up. They're like, wait a second, he said this so many times and he's giving this information differently, so the story's not matching up anymore. And they figure out that, wait, is this story actually true? And it wasn't. It ended up not being a real story, and he's lying on the stand, but he plays it off as if, oh, I wasn't lying, it was just an analogy. But that's not the way that he delivered it. And because he delivered that story, he was swaying actual like law and lawmakers' opinions about things, and it was just straight up lying on the stand by an expert. This is a problem, yes?
Yes.
And if you guys are supposed to use expert testimony as a possible form of evidence, you guys get how sometimes we don't have the data on something. We don't have the hard facts because maybe no one has done that study, or that study is really kind of impossible to do with where we are at with technology, like the way that we're able to gather information. So we have to rely sometimes on what an expert would think, what they could estimate based off of their understanding, their entire, profession of studying in that field. So we ask experts all the time. This guy, he just straight lied to us. So if you want to use an expert, this can be a problem. All I was trying to do with that aspect of it is point you to the problems, the pitfalls, in that you may not even be able to trust the statistics or the data that's being presented to you as evidence. and you may not be able to trust expert testimony or expert opinion on things. So that goes two ways. That means if you want to use it as support, you need to really try to make sure that it's true. But also, if someone else, something that you're disagreeing with, something where you're like, this is fishy, this isn't working, just because it has those two things, it doesn't mean that it's true. It could mean that the same thing is happening here, and your whole essay could focus on dismantling those things and showing, see, that actually wasn't true, because maybe someone was getting away with that expert testimony for a while, but now new findings have come out which, beyond a shadow of a doubt, disprove what that guy was saying. So it can go both ways for you guys. It'll make it more difficult to trust something, but it also gives you more ammunition and more leeway in, but is that really true? Just because this person said it. And the overall point is, don't just trust what everyone else says. You have to look for yourself, which is, yes, I understand. It's a pain in the ass. So what? I can't just trust them, but they're an authority on the matter. And all we keep finding out is authorities lie to us. They could be telling us the truth, and it could even just be a half truth, right? It could be almost true, but there could be a slight twist to it for someone's agenda, either for their agenda or for the person who's paying them, which we saw that doctor was getting paid by the carpet industry or something weird like that. I think it might have been chemicals that are used for the carpet